The security guard's hand froze on his radio. It was 11:30 on a Tuesday night at St. Andrews University. The quad should have been empty, silent, dark, except for the amber glow of the old gas lamps that lined the ancient stone pathways. But there was movement through the iron gates. Beneath the shadow of St. Salvator's tower, someone was drilling. Not studying, not walking drilling. Military drill. The guard, Marcus Webb, had worked university security for 9 years. He'd seen students do strange things at strange hours, pranks, protests, late-night photo shoots for social media. But this was different. The figure moved with precision, sharp turns, measured steps, arms swinging at exact angles. It was the kind of movement you only saw in one place, the King's Guard. Marcus stepped closer, his boots quiet on the wet cobblestones. The mist hung low that night, curling around the old university buildings like smoke. He could hear his own breathing, the distant hum of traffic on North Street, and the rhythm of footsteps. 1, 2, 3. Halt. Turn. 1, 2, 3. Halt. He squinted through the fog. The person was wearing dark clothes, a long coat, hair tied back. Female, he thought. Young. And then she stepped into the light. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button now. You won't want to miss what happens next. Marcus felt his stomach drop. He knew that face. Everyone in Britain knew that face. Lady Louise Windsor, the King's niece, daughter of the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, 21st in line to the throne, and she was practicing military drill in the middle of the night, like her life depended on it. Marcus didn't move. He couldn't. Royal protection officers usually accompanied members of the family everywhere. But she was alone, completely alone. Louise stopped mid-step. Her head turned slightly, sensing she was being watched. For 3 long seconds, neither of them moved. Then she walked toward him. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something Marcus couldn't quite read. Determination, maybe, or fear masked as confidence. "Good evening," she said quietly. Her voice was steady, polite, but there was an edge to it. Marcus cleared his throat. "Your Royal Highness, I didn't expect anyone to be out here." "I know," she replied. "That's why I chose this time." She glanced back at the empty quad, then at him again. "You're wondering why I'm doing this?" He nodded slowly. Louise took a breath. The mist swirled around her shoulders. "Because in 6 months, everything changes." Marcus frowned. "Changes how?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked up at the old tower, its dark silhouette cutting into the cloudy sky. "They're preparing me," she said finally. "For something big, something no one expects." "Who's preparing you?" "The palace." Her jaw tightened. "My uncle, the king himself." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold Scottish air. But why the drill? Why here? Why alone? Louise's expression softened, just for a moment. Because when you're about to step into a role that could change the monarchy forever, you can't afford to be weak. You can't afford to hesitate. She turned to leave, her coat swinging behind her. "Wait," Marcus called. "What role?" Louise paused. She looked back over her shoulder, and for the first time he saw real emotion in her eyes. Not confidence. Fear. "You'll find out soon enough," she whispered. "The whole world will." And then she disappeared into the fog, leaving Marcus standing alone in the cold night air, his heart pounding, his mind racing with questions he had no answers for. Asterisk, asterisk, 3 weeks earlier. Windsor Castle. Louise sat across from her uncle in the oak room, a private chamber most people never saw. The fire crackled in the stone fireplace. Rain drummed against the windows. King Charles looked tired. The weight of the crown, both literal and symbolic, had aged him faster than Louise remembered. "You understand why I've asked you here?" he said. It wasn't a question. Louise nodded slowly. Her hands were folded in her lap, but her fingers trembled slightly. "You want me to take on more duties?" "Not just more," Charles said. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Different. Bigger. He slid a folder across the mahogany table. Louise stared at it, but didn't touch it. What's in there? Your future, he said simply. If you accept, Louise felt her throat tighten. She'd always known this moment might come. Being royal wasn't just about waving from balconies and attending garden parties. It was duty, sacrifice, stepping up when your family needed you, but she'd hoped she'd have more time. The monarchy is changing, Louise, Charles continued. The public wants transparency. They want royals who work, who serve, who understand the real world. I'm still at university, she said quietly.
I know.
And you'll graduate this spring. After that, he tapped the folder. After that, we need you. Louise finally opened it. Inside were photographs, documents, schedules, training programs. Her eyes widened. This is military training. Officer training, Charles corrected. At Sandhurst. Just like your cousins William and Harry. Louise looked up sharply. I thought that was only for heirs. For people in direct line to the throne, was Charles said. But things have changed. We're restructuring the working royals, streamlining. And you, my dear, have something the others don't. What? The people love you, Louise blinked. She'd never thought of herself that way. She was the quiet one, the one who stayed out of the spotlight, the one who drove a carriage at her grandfather's funeral and captured hearts with her quiet dignity. They see you as authentic, Charles continued. Humble, real. You didn't grow up in the spotlight like William's children. You worked at a garden center. You studied English literature like any normal student. But you're still royal. Still one of us. He stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. The Commonwealth is fragile, Louise. Countries are questioning whether they need a monarchy at all. We need fresh faces. New energy. Someone who can bridge the gap between tradition and modernity. And you think that's me? He turned. I know it is. Louise's mind raced. Sandhurst meant months of brutal training. Early mornings, physical tests, leadership drills. And then what? A lifetime of service? Of speeches and tours, and never having a private moment again? What if I say no? She asked quietly. Charles's expression softened. Then you say no. This isn't a command, Louise. It's a request, a hope. He walked back to the table and sat down. But I'll be honest with you. If you decline, we'll ask someone else. And the role we're creating, this new position of Commonwealth Youth Envoy, will go to another family member. Who? Probably Beatrice or Eugenie. Louise felt a strange pang. She loved her cousins. But this felt like it was meant for her. Like everything in her life had been leading to this moment. How long do I have to decide? She asked. 2 weeks. Louise closed the folder. Her hands had stopped shaking. I need to think, of course. Charles stood, signaling the meeting was over. But as Louise reached the door, he called out, Louise! She turned. Your father would be proud. No matter what you choose. Her eyes stung with sudden tears. Her father, Prince Edward, had always protected her from the spotlight. Let her live a quieter life. But even he knew this day might come. She nodded and left the room. 2 weeks. 14 days to decide if she wanted to change. Life forever. She walked through the castle corridors. Past portraits of ancestors who'd made their own impossible choices, queens and princesses who'd sacrificed everything for duty. By the time she reached her car, Louise had already made up her mind. She just needed to prepare herself for what came next, and that's why. 3 weeks later, a security guard found her practicing military drill alone in the dark. Because Louise Windsor wasn't just considering this role, she was already training for it. The morning after Marcus Webb discovered her, Louise's phone rang at 6 a.m. She was already awake. Already dressed in running gear. She'd barely slept. Hello? Lady Louise. The voice was crisp, military, unfamiliar. This is Major Sarah Hendricks from the Household Division. I understand you've begun. Informal preparations. Louise's stomach dropped. News traveled fast in royal circles. I have, she said carefully. The king would like to accelerate your timeline. Can you be in London by tomorrow afternoon? Louise looked around her small student flat. Books everywhere. Unwashed coffee mugs. A life that suddenly felt very far away. Tomorrow? But I have lectures. Essays due. This is more important than essays, Your Royal Highness. The words stung, even though they were true. What exactly happens tomorrow? Louise asked. Your formal briefing? You'll meet the team that will be training you. We'll outline the full scope of your new role. Pause. If you still want it. Louise closed her eyes. I want it. Good. A car will collect you at 2 p.m. Pack for 3 days. What? The line went dead. Louise sat on her bed, her heart hammering. This was real now. Not just midnight practice sessions and theoretical planning. This was happening. She called her mother. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, answered on the first ring. Her voice was tight. You spoke to Major Hendricks? You knew they'd call? I knew the moment your uncle made his decision, there'd be no going back. Sophie sighed. How are you feeling? Terrified. Good. Fear means you're taking this seriously. Louise heard her mother moving around, probably making tea. It was what Sophie did when she was anxious. Busy her hands. Stay in motion. Ma'am, what if I'm not ready? No one's ever ready for this, darling. Your uncle wasn't ready when his mother died. William wasn't ready to be heir. But you do it anyway. Because it matters. Did Dad? Did he know about all this? A long silence, he suspected. We both did. You have something special, Louise. A connection with people. When you stood at Philip's funeral, when you drove that carriage with such grace and strength, the world saw you differently that day. Louise remembered that funeral. April 2021. Her grandfather lying in state, the whole family in mourning. She'd been asked to drive her grandfather's carriage in the procession. A private tribute that became a public moment of beauty. She'd been 17, scared but she'd done it, and people had noticed. What if I fail? Louise whispered. Then you'll get back up, Sophie said firmly. That's what we do. That's what royals have always done. After they hung up, Louise packed her bag. Practical clothes. Running shoes. A few books she knew she wouldn't have time to read. She walked through St. Andrew's one last time that afternoon. Past the old library. The chapel. The beach where she'd walked countless times. Trying to feel normal, students passed her, laughing, complaining about exams, planning nights out. None of them knew that in 24 hours, she'd be in a classified briefing room. Learning how to represent an entire generation across 56 countries. That evening. She met her best friend Emma for coffee. Emma knew something was wrong immediately. You look like you're about to tell me someone died. No one died, Louise said. But something's ending. What do you mean? Louise wrapped her hands around her mug. I'm leaving. Not forever, but I'm taking on something big. Something that's going to change everything. Emma's eyes widened. Is this about the monarchy? About your family? Louise nodded. Double quotes, oh my God, you're being sent abroad, aren't you? Some royal tours? Bigger than that? Emma leaned in. How much bigger? I can't say yet. But in a few months, you'll understand. Everyone will. They sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop was warm and loud, filled with ordinary life. Louise tried to memorize it. This feeling of being just another student, just another person, will you still be you? Emma asked quietly. It was the question Louise had been asking herself. I hope so, she said. But honestly, I don't know. The next afternoon, a black car arrived exactly at 2 p.m. Louise threw her bag in the back and climbed in. No fanfare. No photographers. Just a driver in a dark suit who nodded politely and pulled away. They drove south, through Scotland. Through England, past fields and villages and motorways. Louise watched the landscape change. Watched the light fade. By the time they reached London. It was dark, but the city was ablaze with light. Buckingham Palace glowed in the distance. The London eye turned slowly. Life pulsed everywhere. The car didn't stop at the palace. Instead, It turned down a side street, through an unmarked gate, and into a courtyard Louise had never seen before. Major Hendricks was waiting. She was tall, 50s, with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She shook Louise's hand firmly. "Welcome, Your Royal Highness. Are you ready?" Louise thought about her grandfather, her uncle, the weight of history and the hope of the future. She said, "Good, because starting tomorrow, your life as you knew it is over." The briefing room was underground. Louise followed Major Hendricks down a narrow staircase, through to security checkpoints, past guards who stood so still they might have been statues. The room itself was windowless. A long table, leather chairs, screens on every wall. 5 people waited for her. Major Hendricks made introductions. "Lady Louise, this is your team. Colonel James Wright, Military Liaison. Dr. Amara Okonkwo, Commonwealth Relations. Marcus Thornberry, Media and Communications. Eleanor Chen, Protocol and Etiquette. And Lord Ashford, your private secretary." Each one nodded as their name was called. Their faces were serious, professional. This wasn't a friendly meeting. This was business. "Please sit," Lord Ashford said. He was older, maybe 70, with kind eyes that had seen decades of royal service. Louise sat. Her hands were clammy. Lord Ashford clicked a remote. The screens lit up. Images appeared. Young people from across the Commonwealth: Kenya, Jamaica, India, Australia, Canada, Pakistan, faces of every shade, every background, all looking directly at the camera with hope and hunger for something better. "This is your constituency," Lord Ashford said. 2.5 billion people, 60% under the age of 30. They're the future of the Commonwealth, and right now, they're slipping away. Dr. Okonkwo leaned forward. Her Nigerian accent was strong, but clear. "Recent polling shows that 71% of young people in Commonwealth nations feel disconnected from the monarchy. They don't see it as relevant. They don't see themselves reflected in it." She clicked to the next slide. A graph showing declining support. "We're losing them," she said bluntly. "And if we lose them, we lose everything." Louise felt the weight of those numbers. "And you think I can change that?" "Not alone," Colonel Wright said. His voice was gravel and authority. "But you're the right age, the right profile. You haven't been overexposed. You're not controversial. And most importantly, you understand what it means to work." Marcus Thornberry, the media man, jumped in. "When photos of you working at the garden center went viral, engagement went up 43% among 18 to 30-year-olds. When you drove that carriage at Prince Philip's funeral, Twitter exploded. People saw strength, grace, realness. But selling plants and driving a carriage isn't the same as being a royal ambassador," Louise said.
"Oh."
Lord Ashford agreed. "Which is why you'll be trained. Extensively, starting immediately." Eleanor Chen opened a thick binder. "Your schedule for the next 5 months. Physical training 3 times a week. Media training twice a week. Language lessons in French, Swahili, and Hindi. Briefings on every Commonwealth nation, protocol, history, diplomatic strategy." She slid the binder across the table. Louise flipped through it. Every single day was blocked out. 5 a.m. wake-ups, training sessions, meetings, study periods, no breaks. No weekends. This is intense. "It has to be, Major," Hendricks said. "In June, you'll graduate from St. Andrews. In July, you'll be formally announced as the Commonwealth Youth Envoy. In August, you begin your first tour. 6 countries in 3 weeks." Louise's head spun. 3 weeks. 6 countries. "That's just the beginning," Dr. Okonkwo said. "Over the next 2 years, you'll visit all 56 Commonwealth nations. You'll meet with youth leaders, activists, entrepreneurs. You'll attend summits, give speeches, represent the king in situations that require a fresh face and a new voice." "And if something goes wrong?" Louise asked. "If I mess up?" Silence. Marcus Thornberry finally spoke. "Then it'll be front-page news. Every newspaper, Every website, every social media platform. You'll be scrutinized like never before. Your words twisted. Your actions judged. Welcome to being a working royal. The room felt smaller suddenly, airless. I need a moment, Louise said quietly. Lord Ashford nodded. Of course. There's a corridor outside. Take your time. Louise stood on shaking legs and left the room. The corridor was cold. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. She pressed her back against the wall and tried to breathe. This was bigger than she'd imagined. Bigger than drill practice and theoretical planning. This was her entire life, mapped out, scheduled, monitored. She thought about Emma, about coffee shops and late-night conversations, and the freedom to just exist without every move being calculated. She thought about her father, who'd chosen a quieter royal life, who'd protected his children from exactly this kind of pressure. She thought about her uncle, sitting in that oak room, trusting her with something monumental. Footsteps approached. Colonel Wright appeared. He didn't speak at first, just stood there, hands behind his back. Second thoughts, he asked finally. 50th thoughts, Louise said. He smiled slightly. That's normal. I've trained 3 generations of royals. They all have that moment. Usually right before the real work starts. Does it get easier? No, he said honestly. But you get stronger. Louise looked at him. You think I can do this? I think you're the only one who can. You've got something the others don't. You've lived outside the bubble just enough to understand real people. But you're still royal enough to command respect. That's rare. Turned to go, then paused. The question isn't whether you can do this, Your Royal Highness. The question is whether you will. Louise stood there for another minute. Then she walked back into the briefing room. 5 faces looked up at her. I have conditions, she said. Lord Ashford raised an eyebrow. Go on, I finished my degree. I walk at graduation. That's non-negotiable, agreed. I want to do this my way. I'll follow protocol, but I won't be a robot. If I'm supposed to connect with young people, I need to be authentic. Marcus Thornberry smiled. The palace won't like that, and then the palace will have to adjust. Louise said firmly. For the first time that night, she felt something shift inside her. Not confidence exactly, but determination. She was done being afraid. When do we start? She asked. Major Hendricks stood. 5 a.m. tomorrow? Physical training. Don't be late. Start asterisk. The alarm went off at 4:30 a.m. Louise groaned and rolled out of bed. Her temporary quarters in the secure compound were small but comfortable. Military-style efficiency. Nothing fancy? She pulled on training gear and stepped into the cold morning darkness. Major Hendricks was already there. Along with a physical training instructor who introduced herself as Sergeant Kelly Moss. Right then, Moss said. Her accent was pure London. Let's see what you're made of. For the next hour, Louise ran, crawled, climbed, did push-ups until her arms screamed, lunges until her legs shook, burpees until she thought she might throw up. This wasn't gentle royal exercise. This was military conditioning. Why so hard? Louise gasped during a water break. Because you'll be traveling to difficult places, Moss said. Hot climates, high altitudes, long days. If you can't keep up physically, you'll fail. Simple as that. By week 2, Louise could barely get out of bed. Every muscle hurt. Her hands were blistered from rope climbing. Her shoulders ached from weapons familiarization training. Why do I need to know how to handle a weapon? She'd asked Colonel Wright. Because you'll have armed security, and you need to understand what they're doing. You need to know the weight of responsibility they carry. And in some countries, knowing how to handle yourself could save your life. The words chilled her, but the physical training was only part of it. 3 afternoons a week. Louise sat in a studio with Marcus Thornberry, practicing media interviews. Again, he'd say after she stumbled over an answer about Commonwealth trade policy. I don't understand why I can't just say, I'll look into it. Louise protested. Because I'll look into it sounds like you don't care. You need facts. Numbers. But delivered warmly. Like you actually give a damn. They practiced crisis scenarios. Lady Louise, critics say the monarchy is outdated and irrelevant. What's your response? She'd fumbled that one 7 times before getting it right. The monarchy evolves with each generation. My role isn't to defend an institution, it's to serve people. And that's what I'm committed to doing. Marcus nodded. Better. But you looked defensive. Relax your shoulders. Smile slightly. You're not under attack. You're having a conversation. Language lessons were brutal in their own way. Louise had studied French at school. But conversational diplomacy was different. She needed to discuss climate policy in French, youth unemployment in Swahili, agricultural reform in Hindi. Maranam Louise Hai. Main Yahan Yuva Netritva, Kabori Main, Charcha Karn, Ihun. Her Hindi tutor, Professor Sharma, corrected her pronunciation for the 15th time. The words are correct, but the tone is wrong. You sound like you're reading a textbook. Speak from here, pointed to his heart. With warmth? At night, Louise studied Commonwealth nations until her eyes burned. Barbados, independent since 2021. Remove the Queen as head of state. Major discussion point about the future of the monarchy Jamaica. Ongoing reparations debate. Youth unemployment at 28%. Vibrant cultural scene. Complicated relationship with royal history. Kenya, young. Dynamic population. Tech hub of East Africa. British colonial legacy, still painful. Each country was a puzzle. Each had its own history, wounds, hopes. Skepticism about whether a young British royal could possibly understand their reality. Do you think they'll accept me? Louise asked Dr. Okonkwo one evening. They were reviewing her first speech, planned for a youth summit in Rwanda. Some will, Dr. Okonkwo said honestly. Some won't. Some will see you as a symbol of colonial oppression no matter what you say or do. Others will see an opportunity for bridge building. And how do I handle the ones who hate what I represent? You listen. You acknowledge. You don't defend the indefensible. And you make it clear you're there to serve, not to be served. Dr. Okonkwo leaned back in her chair. I grew up in Lagos. My grandmother remembered British rule. Not fondly. When I was chosen for this position, she asked me why I'd help the royals. You know what I told her? Louise shook her head. That the Commonwealth can be something new. Not a relic of empire, but a voluntary partnership. But only if people like you mean it. Only if you're willing to do the hard work, have the uncomfortable conversations, and earn trust instead of expecting it. What if I can't? Then this whole experiment fails, and the Commonwealth continues its slow death. No pressure. Dr. Okonkwo smiled, but her eyes were serious. Asterisk by March, Louise was back at St. Andrews, trying to balance her final term with her secret training. She'd disappear for long weekends. Miss social events. Turn down invitations. You're being weird, Emma said one afternoon. Are you okay? I'm fine. Just busy with my dissertation. Your dissertation on Virginia Woolf doesn't require you to leave campus for 3 days at a time. Louise wanted to tell her everything. The training, the pressure, the impossible task ahead. But she couldn't. Not yet. Trust me, she said. When I can explain, I will. In April, she defended her dissertation. In May, she took her final exams. And on a bright morning in June, Lady Louise Windsor walked across a stage in St. Andrews and received her degree in English literature. Her parents were there. Her brother, James, but not her uncle. The king was too busy. Too watched, but that night, Louise received a text. Congratulations, graduate. Now, the real work begins. See you Monday. See, Monday meant the formal announcement. Monday meant the world would finally know what Louise had been preparing for. Monday meant everything changed. Louise stood in her St. Andrews flat one last time. She'd packed everything. Said her goodbyes. Emma had cried. Her professors had wished her well. You're going to do something amazing, aren't you? Emma had asked. Louise hugged her tight. I'm going to try. Now, alone in the empty flat. Louise looked at herself in the mirror. She looked different than she had 5 months ago. Stronger, leaner, more serious. Asterisk, asterisk. But underneath, she was still the same person. Still scared? Still wondering if she was enough? Her phone buzzed. A car was waiting. Louise picked up her bag, took one last look around, and walked out the door. The next time the world saw her, everything would be different. Asterisk, asterisk, Buckingham Palace. July 15th, 2026. 10 a.m. Louise stood backstage in a reception room, staring at her reflection one more time. She wore a navy blue suit. Simple, professional, not too royal. Not too casual outside in the grand stateroom. Journalists from around the world waited. Cameras, microphones. The weight of global attention. Major Hendricks appeared at her side. 5 minutes. Louise's mouth was dry. I've practiced this 100 times. Why am I so nervous? Because it's real now, Hendricks said. Once you walk through that door, there's no going back. You'll be public property. Every word analyzed. Every gesture studied. Comforting. Hendricks smiled slightly. You're ready. I've seen plenty of royals unprepared for their roles. You're not one of them. Lord Ashford joined them. The king is seated. Your parents are in the front row. When you're introduced, walk to the podium calmly. Smile, but not too much. You're serious about this role, remember? Louise nodded. And Louise, Lord Ashford's voice softened. Speak from the heart. That's what makes you different. The door opened. Ladies and gentlemen, an announcer's voice echoed. His Majesty the King. Louise heard the rustle of people standing. Her uncle's voice, warm and formal, filled the room. Thank you all for being here. Today marks an important moment for the Commonwealth and for this family. We're entering a new era, one that requires fresh voices and authentic connection with the next generation. He paused. It gives me great pleasure to introduce someone who embodies those values. A young woman who has chosen service over comfort, duty over ease. My niece, Lady Louise Windsor, your new Commonwealth Youth Envoy. Applause erupted. Major Hendricks opened the door. Louise walked through. The room was blinding. Camera flashes. Lights. Faces. Hundreds of them. She walked to the podium where her uncle stood. He kissed her cheek and whispered, "Make us proud." Then he stepped aside, and Louise was alone at the microphone. The applause died down. Silence fell. Louise gripped the podium and looked out at the crowd. She saw her mother, tears already in her eyes. Her father nodding encouragement. Dr. Okonkwo in the third row. Colonel, right near the back. Marcus Thornberry, with his notebook ready. And then she saw the journalists. Skeptical, curious, waiting to see if this was real or just another PR stunt. Louise took a breath. Good morning, she began. Her voice was steady, stronger than she felt. 5 months ago, my uncle asked me a question. He asked if I was willing to serve. Not in a ceremonial way, but in a real, meaningful way. He asked if I was ready to represent a generation that often feels unheard and unseen. She paused. I was terrified. I'm 22 years old. I just graduated from university. Who was I to speak for 2.5 billion people across 56 nations? What did I possibly have to offer? A ripple of reaction moved through the room. Royals didn't usually admit fear. They didn't show vulnerability. But Louise had promised herself she'd be authentic. But then I realized something, she continued. This role isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. It's about listening, learning, building bridges instead of walls. She clicked to the first slide. Images of young people from across the Commonwealth appeared on the screens behind her. These are your stories, your struggles, your dreams. Youth unemployment, climate anxiety, the digital divide, mental health, access to education. These aren't abstract issues. They're real barriers facing millions of young people every single day. Another slide. This time, success stories. A young tech entrepreneur in Kenya, an environmental activist in Fiji, a youth parliament member in Canada, but there's also incredible potential, creativity, innovation, leadership. The Commonwealth's young people aren't just the future. You're the present, and you deserve to be heard. Louise left the podium and walked to the edge of the stage. This wasn't in the script. Marcus Thornberry probably had a heart attack, but Louise needed to do this her way. I know some of you are skeptical, she said. Looking directly at a journalist she recognized from a Caribbean news outlet, why should you trust another British royal to understand your reality? Especially given the complicated history between our nations. She let the question hang. You shouldn't, not yet. Trust is earned, not given. And I haven't earned it. But I'm committed to trying. I'm committed to showing up, listening without defensiveness, and using whatever platform I have to amplify your voices instead of drowning them out. She walked back to the podium. Over the next 2 years, I'll be visiting every Commonwealth nation. I'll meet with youth leaders, activists, entrepreneurs. I'll participate in town halls where anyone can ask me anything. I'll be learning in public, making mistakes in public, and hopefully growing in public. Louise looked at her uncle. He was smiling. This role isn't about me, she said. It's about building a Commonwealth that actually serves its youngest citizens. A Commonwealth that listens. That evolves. That earns its place in the 21st century instead of clinging to the past. She clicked to the final slide. A simple question. What kind of Commonwealth do you want to build? Louise stepped back from the podium. I don't have the answer to that question, but I'm ready to help you find it. Thank you. For a moment, nothing happened. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then the whole room erupted. It wasn't just polite applause anymore. It was real, energized. Surprise questions flew immediately. Lady Louise, when does your first tour begin? Next month. Rwanda first, then Kenya and South Africa. Are you concerned about the criticism you'll face? I'd be naive not to be. But I'm more focused on the work than the criticism. How does this role differ from traditional royal duties? This isn't about ribbon cutting and photo opportunities. It's about policy, engagement, advocacy, and real partnership with young leaders who are already doing incredible work. On and on. 20 minutes of questions. Louise answered each one honestly, sometimes admitting she didn't know, sometimes challenging the premise. Finally, Lord Ashford stepped in. That's all the time we have. Thank you. Louise stepped down from the stage. Her legs were shaking. Her heart pounded, but she'd done it. Backstage, her mother grabbed her in a fierce hug. You were perfect. Absolutely perfect. Her father kissed her forehead. Your grandfather would have been so proud. King Charles approached last. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at her with an expression she'd never seen before. Pride, relief, hope. You just changed everything, he said quietly. You know that, right? Louise didn't know what to say. The old model was dying, Charles continued. Stiff, formal, disconnected. But you just showed them what the monarchy could be. Vulnerable. Authentic. Brave. He squeezed her shoulder. Now comes the hard part. Delivering on those promises? Louise nodded. I know. That night, alone in her new apartment in London, Louise scrolled through social media. The response was overwhelming. Mostly positive. Some skeptical. A few outright hostile, but one comment stopped her. It was from a young woman in Jamaica, 20 years old, studying environmental science. I've never believed in the monarchy. Never saw the point. But today, for the first time, I felt seen. I felt heard. Don't let me down, Lady Louise. We're giving you a chance. Don't waste it. Louise read it 3 times. Then she put her phone down and looked out at London. The lights. The history. The weight of centuries pressing down on this moment. Tomorrow she'd start preparing for Rwanda. For the real work. For the thousands of conversations and handshakes and speeches ahead. But tonight, she let herself feel what she'd accomplished. She'd stood in front of the world, declared her intentions. Now she just had to live up to them. And in that moment, sitting alone in the dark, Louise made herself a promise. She would fail sometimes. She would make mistakes. She would face criticism and doubt and exhaustion, but she would never stop trying. Because that young woman in Jamaica, and millions like her, deserved someone who would fight for her. Them and Lady Louise Windsor was ready to be that person. The guardhood found her practicing drill that foggy night in St. Andrews, had asked what role she was preparing for. Now, the whole world knew. Commonwealth Youth Envoy bridge-builder.voice for the voiceless, and the hardest job she'd ever chosen. But as Louise turned off the lights and tried to sleep, she felt something she hadn't expected. Not fear, not doubt, purpose. And that made all the difference.